Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap and I just did a complete show off the air talking about baseball, which is kind of unique because baseball usually is out of sight, out of mind. But we got distracted, and now we're shifting gears to basketball. Sap, we just like talking to each other. I think that's what it is.
You should just record our off podcast conversations. Sometimes they're really good. We talk football. We talk baseball. I mean, I don't want to have to make another pilgrimage to Cooperstown, New York to continue to fight for my man Barry Bonds getting Hall of Fame. Now, if he gets in, I'll make a pilgrimage to be there at his induction. And I think it would be me and his wife would probably be the only two people there to support Bonds. Obviously not the most likable, I get that, but the best baseball player. Although
Dusty Baker, he might go.
Dusty Baker, yep. Jim Leland, who was his first manager. So there'll be a few of us there, and I hope it happens this year, because if it doesn't happen this year, you have to wait and go on the Veterans Committee, which is just the whole idea of that to me is just sickening. I mean, they put Harold Baines.
Jim Leland was his first manager.
Yeah, with the Pirates.
Is Jim Leland older than baseball?
He was older than baseball then. Look, Jim Leland's a guy with, like, you see these pictures now where they got like Sparky Anderson at 40 and Tom Brady at 44. And you're like, no, that can't be possible. Same thing with Jim Leland. Jim Leland looked like 68 when he was 42. Great manager. And there's a famous video out there where I think Bonds was in his second or third year, and Leland just went at him in spring training, like swearing at him, like, this is my effing club. We're going to do things the way I'm the manager. Like, no one would do that today in baseball, but they had a good relationship. I Leland won his World Series with the Marlins in '97. Bonds had sent like this huge arrangement to congratulate him. Again, Bonds was, a younger, immature guy then. And Leland had a big role in developing him as a player. But yeah, I mean, Bonds and Clemens should be in the Hall of Fame. We discussed that. I went up last year in June. And I ran into a couple of Bonds fans. One was wearing a Pirates 24 shirt, which was the number Bonds wore in Pittsburgh. The guy was from Alabama, big Roll Tide fan. And I'm pretty sure that on January 6th of last year, he was probably somewhere near Washington, D.C. He was just that guy, but we connected over Barry Bonds. We both love Barry Bonds, and let's hope he gets in. We'll find out in a couple of weeks.
He likes big crowd. He likes rallies, is what you're saying about that guy.
He likes rallies, yes, exactly. January 6th in Washington,
very
and he's up in
rah.
Cooperstown. Yep. And you know what, Jet? I bumped into the guy like 6 different times. We bumped into each other at the restaurant. We went. It's like it was almost comical. I put stuff out on Twitter. It was this kind of a hick from Alabama, love Barry Bonds, and here's me loving Barry Bonds, and I hope he gets in. I hope Clemens gets in. And if you vote for one and not the other, I'd like to have a discussion with you, because clearly it's the best player and the best pitcher of the last 50 years. I'll fight anybody on that. I think Barry Bonds is the greatest player. As a voter, please discuss, because the only reason people are going to leave them out is because of ties to steroids. By the way, neither tested positive for steroids. They were on the Mitchell report, and Ortiz was on the Mitchell report, but because people love David Ortiz, he's going to make it in. He's Santa Claus of baseball. But it's going to be interesting. It's always interesting, the Hall of Fame. And then you see the ballots. Dan Shaughnessy voted for one player, Jeff Kent, who, by the way, benefited from playing with Barry Bonds. So if you think Bonds doesn't deserve to be in there because steroids, then indirectly Kent kind of benefited from steroids.
Once they put Bud Selig in, then put all the steroid guys in.
Oversaw everything, right? Put an asterisk on it.
Come on.
Steroid
once Selig was in, the floodgate should have opened. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. He was the guy that oversaw everything, looked the other way. The sport grew literally and figuratively.
So why does he get the revelations and the accomplishments when the players get penalized? It's stupid. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, Seth.
The mastermind of the bank robbery, got acquitted, and the bank robber got convicted. I mean, that's kind of the way to look at it.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
Yeah. Barry's got to get in, and Rogers got to get in, and look, I hope Ortiz makes it as well. I think that would be great. And I think Curt Schilling belongs in there, but I think he doesn't get in because people don't like him. And the voting base is more liberal than conservative, and Schilling is, very conservative and out there. And
I think they're petrified about what his speech would be if he got in.
that would be certainly interesting. And who would present him? Donald Trump? I mean, that could happen, right? Like
Aubrey Huff.
Aubrey Aubrey Huff or Alex Jones, or who knows, right? That would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, how would that be? I mean, the Hall of Fame would be like, holy crap, what are we going to do here?
Aubrey Huff makes Kurt Schilling seem like like Andrew Yang. Like, it's
yes, exactly. Bernie Sanders.
Good. Bernie Sanders. Yeah, that's what Aubrey Huff is.
Woo, Aubrey Huff is one crazy dude on Twitter.
Yeah. But anyways, moving on to back to basketball, into somebody that I hope will never be in the Hall of Fame, but probably will. Unfortunately, my least favorite player in all of sports, Kyrie Irving. He has returned, Sap, to an NBA court just in away games right now because the state rules in New York say he can't play, though there may be some fine apparently the Nets could pay to allow him to play, but we don't have to talk about that right now because it gets into politics and red tape and minutia. But anyways, he's back. He's playing pretty well. And that's led to some headlines in the media, specifically and well, I guess it doesn't work for the media anymore. He's a coach of a team. Chauncey Billups called Kyrie the most skilled point guard ever. Agree or disagree, John Sapichetti?
Well, you have to define skilled, and you know what? The way I define skilled is like if you were going to have a game of horse or a skills competition, I can buy into that. I don't think he's the best point guard ever. I don't think that's even a discussion. Magic was better. Isaiah Thomas was better.
I don't think he's in the top 10.
Probably not. I could go through and come up with 10 guys that I would think are better. I mean, are we going to consider Oscar Robertson a point guard? I don't know. I mean, he kind of played the position. Steph Curry, Chris Paul to me is better.
Yeah.
You know, James Harden, if James Harden's a point guard, he's better. Walt Frazier is better. There's a bunch of guys that are better, more.
I know you hate him, but John Stockton
better. Absolutely. I mean, talk about a guy, as much as I don't like John Stockton, who was incredibly durable. The guy like never missed games.
Isaiah Thomas also, by leaps and bounds, I would say.
Isaiah Thomas to me is without question. I'd put him, if I was ranking point guards, and again, this is tough because is Allen Iverson a point guard? You know, I know he's only 5'10".
Yeah, I'd say no, but
10.5, but he's it becomes complicated. Steph is a point guard, but he shoots so well. And
right.
To me, Isaiah Thomas and Chris Paul were the most natural point guards because, first of all, Magic was in another class. He's 6'9". He did all the things you'd want as a point guard. He was different. Oscar was different. And Steph's such a great shooter and more of a scoring point guard. The truest point guards to me were Isaiah Thomas and Chris Paul. 6 feet tall, tremendous pass, incredible leaders. Just look at what Isaiah Thomas did. I mean, he won 2 championships without a top 75 player. Like the second best player on that team. Well, Dennis Rodman did make the 75th anniversary team, but
Joe Dumars was the second best player.
Joe Dumars was the second best player, right? Joe Dumars was the second best player, and then a bunch of role guys. And Isaiah, again, name me another player you can't who had a winning record in the postseason against Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan. That's Isaiah Thomas. So, more accomplished than Kyrie. I don't know if anybody's more talented than Kyrie, though. I mean, we're talking 6'2", 6'3", ridiculous handle, right? I mean,
he's the best dribbler I've ever seen. Yeah, I hate giving the guy compliments, but I got to give him that one. He's the best dribbler I've ever seen.
His handle is incredible. Finishing at the rim. I mean, is there ever been a guy at that size that finishes at the rim quite like Kyrie?
Allen Iverson's the closest I can think.
Yeah, he was more explosive and athletic. Kyrie's more crafty. But Kyrie's so damn smooth. Like everything he does on the court, it looks so natural. His mid-range game is outstanding. He's a good 3-point shooter. He can be a great passer, but he's more score first. So skilled, yeah, I can buy into that. Just he's not the best. But who do you think is the most skilled wide receiver in the history of football?
Probably Randy Moss.
Okay, exactly. Who's the greatest wide receiver in NFL?
Jerry Rice by a mile.
Exactly. And look,
no one's even close to him, by the way.
No he's kind of like lapping people. I think Aaron Rodgers is the most skilled quarterback ever. I don't think he's the greatest quarterback ever. So see what I'm saying? Like Kevin Durant to me is the most natural, unguardable scorer the sport's ever seen, but he's only 6th all time in scoring in terms of points per game, behind Wilt and Michael and LeBron actually, and a lot of other great players. So you see my point there is that you could be the most skilled guy, but not the best guy. And that's why I think all the players really love and respect Kyrie because they're in awe of his talent. I think he's the guy in like the pickup games that the other 9 guys on the court are going, holy shit, that guy is ridiculous, right? Like he's doing things that you could only dream of doing.
Well, I
so
think
I can
also
buy into that.
Skill doesn't necessarily always translate into winning too, because I don't
Right.
know that Kyrie is a guy that ever made any of his teammates better.
No. First 3 years in Cleveland, they were the worst team in basketball. Now, again,
we say the same thing about Tatum, right? I mean, skilled up the ass. I mean, he could do everything, but has he made a player better?
No. Whereas Chris Paul isn't as skilled as Kyrie, but he makes players better because he plays. First of all, he's much better on the defensive end, but that we don't generally rate players in terms of skill by their defense. That is considered more effort. Although it is a skill. I mean, I don't think every player in the NBA could play defense at the same level. I think there's some guys that are better at it than others. But yeah, I would make that case that he's the most skilled. I've said he may be the most skilled player ever. Doesn't make him the better, even make him a top 75 player ever because he hasn't done it. And a lot of those skills, like you said, don't translate into winning. Like if you could pick one player in the NBA today to go play for the Harlem Globetrotters, it would be Kyrie, right?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, yeah, and I think he's wildly entertaining to watch. I know you can't stand him. I think he's kind of kooky, and again, I like athletes that make news and give us things to talk about. So Kyrie kind of does that, even though he's out of his mind. But as far as skill, yeah, he's as good as it gets, and I have no problem with that statement. But like we said, here's 10 better than Kyrie because they impacted winning more, and they did the things that help you win and make other players better. And then that's a different skill. But in terms of ball handling,
natural skill only gets you so far, right? I mean, there's got to be degrees to it. You can't just say, okay, he's the most skilled, he's the best ever. Those are not the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Williams, White Thunder, what was his
White Chocolate?
Nickname? White Chocolate. He had all sorts of crazy skills, right? But he wasn't the best point guard in basketball.
Sure, even guys who have washed out of the league, like Sebastian Telfair, was crazy skilled.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, who do you think was more skilled? I'll take 2 white point guards because what the hell? Why not? Jason Williams or John Stockton? Probably Jason Williams.
Yeah.
Skill, but John Stockton was obviously a better player. First of all, he was better on the defensive end, so
that's knew how to play the game, right?
I mean, knew how to play the game better. Durable. Played for one franchise, knew how to get the most out of Karl Malone, all of these types of things. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, look, Randy Moss and maybe even Calvin Johnson might have been the 2.
Yeah, that's the other guy that crossed my mind was Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, there's not a lot of dudes walking on the earth that are 6'5", 240 that run a 4.3 40. I don't know of many. That was him. Jerry Rice wasn't that big or fast, but he was the greatest receiver ever. Same thing with Tom Brady. Again, Aaron Rodgers to me is more skilled. Brady's better. It's a different argument. Kyrie being the most skilled point guard ever, yeah, I can buy into that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Chauncey Billups, obviously he's struggled in his debut as a head coach, but he has worked as an analyst for a long time, and he played the exact same position that Kyrie played for a long time at a very high level. Finals MVP, won a championship, played on some really, really good Pistons teams, played on some good Nuggets teams. Was good everywhere he went. So if, I do think he has some insight into the what the most skilled point guard would be. Yep. So at least I'm going to listen when he says it. I just, the only thing I push back on is, what we're talking about is that, okay, but what does that really mean? He's the most skilled. Okay. Like, yeah, maybe you could buy into that, but to me, that's not worth, much unless you're impacting winning.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a skills competition. But does that translate to your 4 teammates? Does it make any of them better? Kyrie probably should have more assists per game than he has, right? He's averaged 5.7 assists per game. Steph Curry's averaged more assists per game and more points. Who's more skilled?
If you want to talk about he's maybe the least skilled off the court point guard I've ever heard of in my life.
Kyrie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know you despise him. His opinion of himself as a pseudo-intellectual is much higher than it probably should be. But yeah, I mean, he's not good in the team structure. I mean, look what's going on in Brooklyn right now. He's not been vaccinated, so he can't play in the Nets home games. I've even thought of the point as, look, are the Nets better off falling in the standings or road games in a playoff series than a home series? I mean, is that?
Yeah, probably.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing too, Jet. This is called show prep, which, I must have a lot of time on my hands at this point.
Yeah.
So far this year, the Nets are 11-10 at home. They're 15-4 on the road. They're a better road team. They have no home court advantage at Barclays, right? Whatsoever. No. I mean, half the time, fans of the other team drown out the Nets fans, if there are even Nets fans.
Yeah,
right?
They just don't have a fans, a fan base.
Right. Look at when Golden State went in there. It was all Golden State fans, Steph fans. So they're better on the road than they are at home. And down the stretch, I think Kyrie can only play one of the final 8 games that the Nets have to play because they're on the road a lot. I mean, they're at home a lot. And also one of the road games is at Madison Square Garden. He can't play, falling to the 3 seed. So in the second and third round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, they won't have home court advantage. They can have Kyrie for games 1, 2, 5, and 7. Maybe he gets vaccinated. James Harden talked about it that, the other night that, be nice to get him here every game so he can build that up. And he says he's going to get him the jab, he's kind of kiddingly, obviously.
Right.
But that's a big part of it. But back to our discussion, skilled. Yeah. I mean, this kid is as skilled as anyone I've ever seen. It's just like, he does things that take your breath away. Like John Morant does it in a different way. John Morant's more athletic, like the block you talked about where he was 3 feet over the rim, or some of his dunks are like, is he 6'2" and he's dunking like he's Dwight Howard? So in his prime, that's different. Derrick Rose, incredible athlete. Westbrook, incredible athlete. Those are like the most athletic point guards we've ever seen, but pure skill. I've said it before. If I could show up to the playground and be any player in the NBA, I'd want to be Kyrie Irving. Right. Because first of all,
I get that.
You're 6'2". I don't want to be 6'9". Plus, if you show up at a playground at 6'9", who the hell's going to play with you? They're going to just say, well, what are we going to do here against this guy? Kyrie would kind of blend into the crowd, and then you go, holy crap. Like, the handle's ridiculous. Everything about the guy. No, he's an artist on the court, maybe a bullshit artist off the court, but he's an artist on the court. And I think what Chauncey Billups, who, as you said, is the perfect guy to say this because he's coaching, he's played in the league, he's been an analyst, and he's not an all-time great player. Like, someone like
he
John
played the
Stockton,
position.
He played the position, played it really well and smart. That's why he was a good analyst. Like even, you see these analysts on football, you got a guy that wasn't really a great player that's a really good analyst because they had to kind of learn the game differently than the great players. So I think he's a perfect guy to say this. And I don't think he was just blowing smoke up everyone's ass when he said this. I think he really meant it. And I'm not far off from agreeing with him.
Yeah, I just don't like, Kyrie Irving's called himself a basketball genius. I don't know if that's the case. A basketball artist? Sure, I could buy that. Basketball
he's
genius?
An artist. I think he's an artist.
LeBron's a basketball genius.
No, LeBron's
Chris Paul's
genius.
A basketball genius. Kyrie Irving, make other players better. Then maybe I'll start to call you a basketball genius.
Yeah, Magic and Bird were geniuses. Genius to me is right. Like Jordan and Kobe, I just think they were like forces of nature more than anything, right? It was just like so determined, so competitive.
There's different. You're really good at basketball. Your dad was a professional basketball player. Like some of this is genetics. Like I don't think Kyrie Irving sees the game in a different way than other people. I just think he's freakishly gifted.
Yeah. That handle is just the only guy I could put. Isaiah Thomas and Allen Iverson were really great. This kid might be better at it. Only
Steph
because
he's the other guy who has the
other
incredible dribble. Yeah.
Incredible dribble. This guy, though, Kyrie's deceptively stronger than those guys. Kyrie's 6'2". He's not slight. He's got a little beef to him. That's why when he goes to the basket, he's so productive because he kind of, he can finish with either hand.
Yeah.
So, no, he's definitely, I have no problem with what Chauncey said, and I'll agree with him.
I didn't like. Did you see this week? They were playing the Blazers, which is why Chauncey Billups was talking about it. And the young player in the Blazers, Nasir Little, but this is his second year in the league, I think. And he made a play where he dove kind of near Kyrie's legs, underneath his legs after a loose ball. And Kyrie got all pissy about it and said, "There's no place in our game for something like that." And credit to Nasir Little, who said, "I respect Kyrie. It wasn't trying to hurt him. I do that play 100 times out of 100. So I think stuff like that irks me about Kyrie too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. He obviously feels entitled. His dad played professionally. I think he came from affluence. He went to Duke, which that's a whole other set of issues. Like the Dukies are pretty much carry them.
Yeah.
themselves. Just seem like
especially
just a really
since the era of the one and dones, the Dukies.
Oh Lord,
a lot
yeah.
different.
I mean, Jason Tatum. I mean, they're just their shit's ice cream. So I think that, yeah. I mean, that is he likable off the court? No, on the court, he's just incredible to watch. And I love great, talented basketball players, and he is that.
Yeah, he's that and a lot of other things.
Oh yeah, he's complicated. That's the other thing. Oh, remember when he got here, enigmatic was a word to use to describe him.
Right.
What other word? He's
douche.
Well, that came later. I mean, I remember his original press conference. Everybody was like, falling over themselves.
Yeah,
like
myself included. I fell for it. I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, I'm not going to do revisionist history here. I completely bought in. And if you remember at the Herald, I said there was no way he was leaving the Celtics. I thought I was laughing at you.
Me and Christian Burgoyne said he's gone. You and Mike Molyneux, our good friend, said, "Oh no, he said at the beginning of the season he's staying." I go, I believe me. I know more about Kyrie Irving.
I fell for
being a LeBron guy. I'm like, don't believe anything. He's not reliable on and off the court. That's the other thing too. I mean,
your guy Skip Bayless calls him a flake, I believe, is what he calls him.
That's perfect, but he loves him. I mean, he still claims the 2016 championship was because of Kyrie, not LeBron.
Okay.
But I guess the 93 NBA championship was because of John Paxson, not Michael Jordan, because he hit the game-winning shot. I don't know. Different sets of rules for my guy and for Michael Jordan.
I hate to be in a position where I have to defend LeBron, but if it's LeBron and a Kyrie debate, I'm choosing LeBron. 10 times out of 10. I'm going to defend him. I'm not going to defend Kyrie with anything.
What's he ever won without him? I think he's won one series without him, and that was the Celtics over Indiana back in 2018 or whenever.
Yeah, 19. His whole winning. His perspective of himself is he's this like great winner, basketball genius and stuff. But the only season he's won anything is when LeBron was playing at his absolute peak of his powers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, LeBron is all boats.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on from him because I don't want to talk about him anymore. Another guy that we mentioned, Steph Curry. Well, he's also, feels very entitled, though more so than Kyrie Irving. He's actually earned it because, he's won several titles and has won several MVPs and is the all-time leading three-point maker in NBA history. So I take him a little bit more seriously. He says that his 2016-2017 Warriors team would beat the 1995-1996 Bulls team that many people consider to be the greatest team in NBA history. Where do you fall in that debate, Sap?
I think it could have beat them. And the reason I'll say that, and I'm going to steal this from my good friend Nick Wright, who people despise more than Kyrie Irving, but Nick had some good points on this subject. The Golden State Warriors in 2015, 2016 won 73 games, right? Lost a 7-game series to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. That was considered one of the great teams of all time. Maybe the greatest team that didn't win a title, kind of like the 07 Patriots that went.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Before losing the Super Bowl, 73-9 is ridiculous. But then they lost to LeBron in the finals. That team added Kevin Durant, right? So how can't they be in the discussion of a great team? They added Kevin Durant, and the beauty of when they added Kevin Durant was it was seamless, right? It's kind of like Curry, Clay, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green. Like it worked. It wasn't. Now when LeBron,
and that's not even it. Iguodala, Livingston, right? I mean,
all those guys, right? So and the coach was perfect for that team. Like even when LeBron went to Miami, it was a little choppy at the beginning, right? I think their first year they were like 9-8 and then lost to Dallas.
Yeah.
Golden State, after the 73-9 season, at that point the second best player in basketball, right? After
LeBron's harder to play with. You've said this before, right? That's why it's a slower start. It's harder to play with.
It's a slower start. I think his level of intellectualism on the court is such a high level. It takes a little while to that.
All ball-dominant players are harder to play with.
Yeah, exactly. Steph's not ball-dominant. Steph's easier to play with because he runs around off
Durant
the
screen.
Isn't either. Neither is Durant. When they got together, like this is really going to be silly because they're great, and then they're going to be great together. And then you got Clay, who's the perfect third guy, and Draymond's the bouncer in the club.
Steph shoots 2 seconds into the shot clock. That's the opposite of ball dominant. He takes 2 dribbles.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah, and then what is Clay? Didn't Clay score 50 something points on like
2
8 dribbles
dribbles
one night?
Yeah, something.
Yeah, it's just like that's why
Spot up.
that team is awesome to watch. I mean, compared to the Celtics, who sometimes so those guys score 2 points on 50 dribbles. But yeah, I that's why I think it would be a series. Now, if you want to compare the two teams, and look, there's other teams that I think could have beaten them in their prime. I would think the 83 76ers, the 86 Celtics, and the 87 Lakers from the 80s, I think could have all certainly played with those teams and maybe beaten them. The only thing is, you got to give the Bulls credit because they had 2 3-peats. Now, I don't think the league was as strong when they did that compared to when the Sixers, Lakers, and Celtics were kind of going back and forth with titles because they were all beating each other. They were 3 all-time great teams that had to go through those teams. So, yeah, I can make a case for those 3 teams, but let's keep it to those 2 teams. If you want to take the 2 best players off of each team, right? So you got Durant and Curry, Jordan and Pippen. If we're going to rank those 4 players, it would be Jordan and Pippen. And the beauty of those 4 guys is they played so well together. Like Pippen was perfect for Jordan. Curry and Durant were perfect. It wasn't like LeBron and Dwayne Wade. That was choppy at times. Not just the first year, like all 4 years at times looked a little awkward. Now, if you look at the rest of the roster, okay, Dennis Rodman and Draymond Green are kind of similar, right? I mean, we compare those 2 guys as pretty similar players, like defense, rebounding, role guys.
Slight edge to Rodman, I'd say, but
a little bit because he led the league in rebounding every year. But those same types of guys. Do the Bulls have anybody remotely close to Klay Thompson? I don't think so. No,
no, I'm not saying that's close, but that's their closest.
Right. I mean,
the coach.
Judd Bushler and Luke Longley and even their big guys weren't all that great. I mean, so I
don't think you even have to remove the first 2. You could just remove one, take out Durant and take out Jordan.
Jordan, I would take at that point. Steph's better than Pippen. Now, no, I don't think it's a sweep. Well, yeah.
If you take out Jordan and you take out Durant, Steph, Clay and Draymond sweep that Bulls team.
Because Pippen, as great as Pippen was, he wasn't a guy that was going to go out and score 35. That just wasn't his game. He was more Kawhi Leonard, except Kawhi's grown into more of a scorer over the last few years. So that's the greatness of Michael Jordan, right? And
that's sort of how it works in the NBA is that if you have the best player on the court, you have a puncher's chance. And that's really the only advantage the Bulls would have in that series is they would have the best player on the court. And, Jordan, if you said to him, you can't win unless you score 60, he could score 60.
He could go score 60. Yeah. I mean, he was, again, force of nature. What Nick Wright also said, which I agree with, is that people, especially from my generation, I'm 58, they're like, no one could ever beat Michael Jordan. I'm a little different. I think LeBron's better than Jordan. I got old and Isaiah got old and Magic was old when he beat him in the finals. And, he broke through after those teams started to lose it. Not taking that much away from him. That's just kind of the way the world works. You don't just show up at the beginning and start winning titles in the NBA, although Magic and Bird did, Magic in his first year, Bird in his second year, but they went to really, really great teams. I mean, and they made them even greater. So, but the problem I always have is no matter what you do, if Michael Jordan's in the discussion, no one's beating him. And like Nick Wright said, a 73-9 team added the second best player in the league in Kevin Durant. And people that are Jordanistas who think that he's by far the greatest player ever think that Jordan and 4 blood relatives could have beat the Golden State team. That's where it gets absurd. Like, oh, Jordan's in the discussion. Obviously, Jordan would win. Well, no, let's have a discussion. I think that would have been a hell of a series. And then again, the old timers, which I'm supposed to be one, but I'm not, come out and say, well, hand checking in the 90s, Steph Curry would have got beat up. Steph Curry would be great in any era. I mean, when you could shoot like that, I don't care what era you're playing in. Klay Thompson would be great in any era. Kevin Durant would be great in any era. So I don't buy into that. And look, Utah was a really good team. They took the Bulls twice to 6 games. In 95-96, Seattle took the Bulls to 6 games and actually had a puncher's chance if they had started the series with Gary Payton on Michael Jordan instead of not having him on Michael Jordan for the first 3 games. And Chicago got up 3-0. So those teams aren't as good as Golden State. I don't think Golden State would have a better chance of beating the Bulls than the Utah Jazz and the Seattle Supersonics with Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. I mean, this is so just logically deducting this, it would be a series, and the offensive firepower for Golden State would be ridiculous. And again, with the ability of Durant and Kyrie to stretch the floor, it would be a problem. It would.
No, I mean, I have Jordan as the greatest player of all time. I have LeBron, up in my up high. I'm not going to say how high.
He's second in your grouping. Don't push back. Again, the only other two, the four guys that are in that discussion to me are LeBron, Jordan, Russell, and Kareem. I think that's where the discussion should end. And if someone wants to put Kareem and Russell in there, I'm all for it. Wilt's kind of in his own little category, and I put him in there with Magic and Bird. He just didn't win enough, and he was kind of, talk about a flaky guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Wilt was as flaky as they come. But my Lord, I mean, the physical ability was just ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, so.
But that being said, Sep, so again, I'm a Jordan guy. My credentials are well established. Gun to my head, I would pick the Warriors in that series.
Yeah. See, that's what I like, because I'm like, everybody, it would be a series.
That's not a slight on Jordan. That's a compliment to the ridiculously loaded war. That's why I still don't like Kevin Durant, is because I've never seen a team that loaded before. International teams don't get nearly that loaded.
No, it was seamless, because those guys are so, like, I think now the fear I have with the Nets is when you see those three guys together, Durant, Kyrie, and Harden. They're 13-3 in 16 games they've played together in the last 2 years. It's kind of laughable. They've only played 16 games in a year and a half now.
Yeah.
But wow. I mean, Kyrie's, not vaccinated, and who's got load management. It's seamless with those guys, isn't it? I mean, it looks good. Like, it's not choppy.
I don't think if they're all healthy, they can be beaten. I said that last year.
Well, how close did they win last year with Harden hobbled, playing on one leg?
Damn close.
And Kyrie missing the last half of that series against Milwaukee. And, again, if Durant's foot was an inch smaller, that's a 3, not a 2. Like, again, Milwaukee was a fascinating story last year. Milwaukee and Phoenix getting to the finals, but things broke right for them, right? I mean,
no doubt.
Brooklyn Lakers were healthy last year, and Brooklyn was healthy last year. They meet in the finals. I think we all agree with that. But that's what's scary about Brooklyn, like, because Kyrie, Durant, and Harden, that works because I give Kyrie this credit, and I know you never want to give him credit for anything, but when they acquired Harden, he quickly said, okay, Harden's the point guard, because Harden's a better point guard than Kyrie, right? A more natural distributor of the basketball. So that's where it really gets scary. Durant, Steph, and Clay was just, it was seamless. It was breathtaking to watch. It was efficient, and they knew how to share the ball, and no one thought they had to shoot more than the next guy. It was just beautiful to watch. And it would have been an interesting series. Like, they could have rotated guys on Jordan. And again, Jordan would get 35 a game. Who the hell's stopping him? But, you could put Draymond on him for a little bit. Clay's a hell of a defender. You could put Iggy on him for a little bit, right? I mean, so you'd have some options there. The guy that you have to ask this to is Steve Kerr. He played on the Bulls, and he coached the Warriors. Like, he's the one guy that's the perfect guy to ask. I don't know if he's ever, I'm sure he's been asked that. I don't know if he's really, I think he wants to remain politically correct and maybe not piss Jordan off.
Yeah, I think if he was around, if he's in the Golden State locker room, he'll say Golden State. If he was at a Bulls reunion, he'll say the Bulls. Yeah,
I mean, he's the most capable guy. Like, I would like to maybe, with truth serum, say, what do you think?
Yeah.
It would be fascinating. It was different eras, different styles of basketball. And look, all those guys would adapt. Like, Jordan would become a better 3-point shooter. He would have started taking 3-point shots, right? Like, so, and Steph hand checking, like, really, Steph's not going to still get 30 a game. Like, how the hell? I don't care what you do.
But that's
Kevin
the thing,
Durant,
Steph. It doesn't matter. Like, okay, say Jordan completely takes Curry out of the game. I don't think that's possible because of how good of a shooter he is. But say
how
he does,
exhausted would he be?
Okay,
Jet?
but
imagine
still,
chasing that guy.
But then they have Kevin Durant. Okay, so let's say Scottie Pippen completely takes him out of the game. Okay, well then they have Klay Thompson.
Who the hell? Well, yeah, you get 3 ridiculous weapons, and then also the thing about Steph Curry that makes him he's not a ball dominant guy. Like, Durant can do both, but Steph is just flying around the court. Like, who the hell wants to cover him through picks and everything else? I mean, you don't want to waste Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen on defense. I think Ron Harper might have been the guy that would be tasked with chasing him. Maybe
good defender.
Yeah, real good.
Fine,
I
yeah.
mean, that team was a ridiculously great defensive team because you
Yeah.
had Pippen, who may have been a better defender than Jordan, if you can believe that. Rodman, obviously, all-time great defender. Harper was a really good defender, and Kukoc was a good defender. And by the way, if you're playing on Michael Jordan's team, you better play defense, or you're going to get punched in the head.
Right.
You know, literally, which he punched Steve Kerr in the eye. Like Jordan demanded more of his teammates than any player I've ever seen. It's to the point
that's
where
the only reason why this is a discussion.
Right.
Is
because of him.
The Jordan's
because
the
he's
X
the
factor,
sheer will.
obviously.
The sheer will. Like, this guy is just like, he would be talking trash to Durant. He'd be, maybe he would physically intimidate everyone.
No, that's why I said the NBA is the only sport where this becomes a factor in a playoff series.
Right.
You have the best player on the court, even if your team is crap. If you have the best player on the court, you have a puncher's chance. Because that's how basketball works.
Yeah. The Lakers, LeBron's gone to 10 finals, and every one of those finals, he was the best player, right? Yeah. I mean, and he's 4-6, but at least the reason he got to those was because of him, and the reason he had a puncher's chance in those was because of him. Look, when he lost back-to-back years to Golden State, there wasn't much anyone was going to do against that team, especially. It was they would have won 3 in a row if they didn't get if Durant doesn't get hurt, and if Clay doesn't blow out his knee, and Curry was hurt in that series against Toronto, they would have won 3 in a row.
No, they weren't losing to anybody. Not losing to anybody.
Jet in 2016, 2017, they won their first 15 playoffs. They were up 3-0 against Cleveland in those season. I mean, Jordan still had to go. Jordan never really went 7 games, especially in the finals. Never won 7 games, but he would go 6. Yep. So, like I'm saying, if you think Utah went twice 6 games against Jordan, and Seattle won 6 games against Jordan, you don't think Golden State could have at least got it to game 7 and maybe won it? And that's where I get pissed off, is when people say, "Oh, Jordan would have swept them." Yeah, he would have just. No, I mean, he's phenomenal. I mean, make the case he's the greatest player of. I don't think he is, but it's a discussion. But yeah, I mean,
I think it's less about him and more about what the Warriors were. I think
what
that's
the Warriors
have.
Yeah, I mean,
it has little to do with Jordan, honestly.
No, we know. How did LeBron play in those series? He was not, but again, the second best player was one time. It was Jeff Green. Obviously the Bulls had a little bit more. The 18. I mean, JRS was, and Jeff Green was the second best player. Before Durant, his second best player was Matthew Dellavedova. So Jordan had a better supporting cast. And the thing that Jordan always called it that too. Like, imagine LeBron coming out and talking about the rest of the Lakers as a supporting cast. He would get eviscerated. Jordan constantly talked about that. My supporting more honest, cast, though. But people love, well, yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's like my supporting cast. And look, in some sense, they both had supporting casts because they were that great. But I'd say I think the Warriors could beat them and would beat them because, again, the firepower was just incredible. I don't think Kevin Durant's going to get intimidated of Steph Curry. No.
No, I agree with you. I think they beat them. They're the best team I've ever seen, and I was alive for the Bulls season, that 95-96 season. So I'd have to say the Warriors. The only other teams that I've seen that was that level of just so much better than everybody else was like the 0-1 Lakers, who ripped through the playoffs, but they really only had 2 guys.
They had 2 guys, and then that bunch of role players. Although Shaq
would be a problem, a massive
for
problem
everybody. Yeah, it'd be a massive problem. Yeah,
nobody could defend him.
And who wouldn't want to see Kobe against Jordan? That would have been incredible. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those guys were great. Again, I'll look back to the '80s with the Sixers. The team that's always forgotten is the '83 Sixers because they only won 1 title, but they had Moses Malone, Dr. J, Andrew Toney, Mo Cheeks, Bobby Jones, all pretty much in their prime.
Yeah,
all
loaded.
It was loaded. And Moses Malone in that era was Shaq. Like, he was just a guy no one could deal with. A little bit different, but similar results. The 85-86 Celtics don't have to take a backseat to anybody. I was
they
at
lost one home game.
They won in the entire season. I was at every game. I covered that team. It was a joke. It was like, even if they got down, they were going to win by 12. It was just, are they going to win by 12? Are they going to win by 20? Can they win by 30 if they really want? Like, teams were just broken mentally when they came in. And the 87 Lakers, because Magic was at his peak. Kareem was still pretty damn good, and Worthy was great. And then you had, Frickin' Michael Thompson was the backup center. The 86 Celtics, Bill Walton was the backup center. Like, I mean, those teams were deeper. Again, that's pre-expansion, right? So the teams were deeper. You had 5, 6 legitimate studs. The teams now are a little bit different. They're just not as deep. The league has more teams.
Yeah,
you do have
more teams.
See, you have a better talent base. You have a better talent base because of, Europe
free agency is more prevalent too, right?
More prevalent. There was a time, yeah, exactly. There was a time, I would say, from about when Jordan dominated, it was post-expansion, pre-foreign players. That impacted the game a lot. Pre-expansion, the teams were just deeper.
It was hard to consolidate. It was hard, much hard to consolidate talent.
And then when Dirk, to me, is a foreign player. I mean, I know Elijah Wan was from Nigeria, but he played college basketball at Houston. So Dirk and those guys started to break through, and the foreign players started to be incredible. Now the talent base was much wider, but there was a swath in there where the league had a lot of teams with not as big a talent base. And Jordan, I think, again, won his 6 titles in a slightly watered down league.
Yeah, and you also had
You also had
a lot of GMs or owners, I should say, running it more as a hobby as opposed to a business.
Exactly. Yeah. You had
and so teams were. You had you had the Celtics and the Lakers were taking it seriously, and they ended up getting the number 1 picks in drafts when they had the best record in the league because they were the only teams that knew what they were doing. So
we've done this exercise, like compare who LeBron played in the finals compared to who Jordan played in the finals, and everybody goes, "Well, the Eastern Conference was really tough." I'm like, the 2 teams he had to beat to get to the finals all those years were Reggie Miller's Pacers. He's the only Hall of Famer on that team, and Patrick Ewing's Knicks. He's the only Hall of Famer on that team.
Correct.
Those teams were good, but they were. Here's the thing: they were physical and they beat you up and all of that stuff. But that's more style over substance. So, so whereas, I mean, people could say LeBron went through the watered down East. He did have to figure, but again, he was beating the Celtics once he went to Miami, right? I mean, and the Celtics, I know they were a little past their prime. The 2012 Celtics were still pretty damn good, right? Yeah. And he also beat them in 2011.
The finals opponents are what's impressive for LeBron. It's not
LeBron more, right?
East was trash for most of his tenure.
He owned it. Yeah, he owned it. I mean, Atlanta wasn't beating him. Toronto wasn't beating him. Indiana, beating Indiana, LeBron beating Indiana was like pretty much Jordan beating Indiana. They had Paul George or Reggie Miller and then a bunch of other guys. So, I mean, again, the Pacers team in 98 that took Jordan to 7 and came really close to win it. They had a lot of old guys like Jackson, Smolin, Jalen Rose. They were really good players. The Davis boys. It was a physical team, and that was a good team. But that's not an all-time great team.
No.
And then in the finals, I think the best team that Jordan beat in the finals was his first one, the 91 Lakers. But that was Magic. Kareem was already gone, and Magic was 6 months away from retiring. Yeah. And then Portland was good, but they had one Hall of Famer in Clyde Drexler. 93 beat Phoenix with one Hall of Famer in Charles Barkley. So we've done this discussion where LeBron played San Antonio in 2014. There was 4 Hall of Famers on that team: Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, and Kawhi. I mean, so that's a little different. And not to mention the Golden State teams with Steph and Clay and Draymond, and twice against Durant too. So and he faced Durant, Harden, and Westbrook in the finals. Although they were very young, they were pretty talented guys. So he faced better competition in the finals than Jordan. But I always push back when everybody just Michael Jordan and 4 North Carolina teammates. Although that would have been James Worthy. That would have been a pretty good team. But Michael Jordan and his 2 brothers and his 2 sons against fill in the blank. Jordan's going to win because he's just Jordan. It's like, okay,
maybe
if he was that, and look, he's great. He's great. What happened to the years he didn't win the championship? He had seasons where he didn't make the finals. I mean, again, as great as he is, he's human. Russell's the one going forward. The man won 11 titles in 13 years and went to 12 finals in 13 years. That to me is, I don't care what the league looked like at that point. That guy was the ultimate winner.
Yeah. I hate when you have me agreeing with you about, LeBron and Jordan.
I try.
Yeah, you manipulate me is what you do.
I am.
Yeah. You twist the argument, but that's going to do it.
I'm like LeBron as the general manager. I'm in the back pulling strings.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented, as always, by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out their website and make sure you check out the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Also, check out our YouTube, youtube.com/JetStryer if you're not already. And check out our social medias at JohnSap25 or at JetStryer. And we'll be back next week with some new pods, NBA's latest news, maybe some more trades will happen. We will see. Talk to you later, everybody.